In today's turbulent and politically charged environment, clashes between media personalities and political figures are becoming more common and more intense. One such confrontation that's drawing attention across the internet involves conservative commentator Candace Owens and Democratic Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. In a moment that has sparked both laughter and controversy, Candace Owens publicly mocked Crockett during a recent broadcast, triggering a wave of reactions from both supporters and critics. But beyond the viral clips and soundbites lies a deeper story, one that questions media influence, political image, and the tactics used to discredit voices on either side of the aisle. In this speech, we'll explore what really happened, why it matters, and how the reaction reveals more about the current state of public discourse than the moment itself. Candace Owens has built her brand on bold, unapologetic commentary, often laced with humor and sarcasm. Her approach is designed not just to inform or persuade, but to entertain and provoke. In this particular instance involving Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, Owens deployed laughter and ridicule as strategic tools, not merely for comic effect, but to diminish Crockett's authority and credibility in the eyes of her audience. Humor in political commentary, especially when targeted at specific individuals, can serve as a powerful rhetorical device. It simplifies complex arguments, bypasses intellectual resistance, and appeals to emotion rather than logic. Owens understands this well and uses it expertly. When she laughed at Crockett, it wasn't just spontaneous amusement, it was calculated. It signaled to her viewers that Crockett is not to be taken seriously, that her arguments are laughable, and that her political persona is worthy of mockery rather than respect. This tactic is rooted in a long tradition of satirical political critique, but Owens takes it a step further by anchoring her attacks in identity politics and ideological antagonism. Candace Owens is known for her ability to weaponize cultural and political tensions. In the case of Jasmine Crockett, a progressive black congresswoman who often speaks out on racial and social justice issues, Owens's laughter takes on additional meaning. It becomes not just a personal jab but a dismissal of the causes Crockett represents. Owens, as a black conservative, occupies a unique space in political commentary. She frequently positions herself in direct opposition to mainstream black political thought, challenging figures who promote systemic inequality narratives or advocate for leftist reforms. Her laughter at Crockett is therefore layered. It's not just Candace mocking a political opponent, but Candace symbolically rejecting an entire political worldview. By laughing, she minimizes the weight of Crockett's words and actions, suggesting that they are not merely wrong but absurd. This erodes the seriousness of Crockett's platform, particularly for viewers already predisposed to distrust progressive politicians. The use of laughter in this way is psychologically potent. Laughter is disarming. It catches audiences off guard. It creates a social cue that signals what is acceptable or unacceptable, credible or ridiculous. When a public figure like Candace Owens mocks someone, it can produce a snowball effect. The audience joins in, the ridicule spreads, and the mocked figure becomes a meme, a punchline, rather than a respected political actor. For Owens, this is a tactic to seize control of the narrative. If she can get people laughing at Crockett, she doesn't need to engage deeply with Crockett's policies or reasoning. The laughter does the work. It's emotional shorthand for rejection, a shorthand that bypasses the need for debate. And, when deployed on platforms where attention spans are short and outrage travels fast, it can be devastatingly effective. But Owens doesn't laugh in a vacuum. Her style of engagement thrives on tribalism, the political, us versus them mentality. Her followers don't just watch her for analysis, they watch her for validation. When she mocks someone like Crockett, she's not just offering commentary, she's reinforcing an ideological identity. The laughter becomes a bonding mechanism. It tells her audience, you're in on the joke, and those people like Jasmine Crockett, are not. This dynamic intensifies political polarization. It reduces political figures to caricatures, simplifies complex issues into punchlines, and reinforces divisions that make genuine dialogue harder. For Candace Owens, though, this is a feature, not a bug. Her brand flourishes in conflict, and laughter is a way to dominate the rhetorical battlefield without ever needing to directly engage with opposing ideas on their own terms. The Crockett moment exemplifies how humor, especially derisive humor, can serve as a potent form of soft power in the media landscape. Owens didn't need to produce charts, facts, or policy critiques to influence perception. All she needed was a smirk and a well-timed laugh. The implication was clear: Crockett isn't worth serious discussion. This strategy sidesteps the need for constructive debate and instead replaces it with performative takedowns. And because Owens's platform is massive and her clips go viral, the ripple effect of that laughter is wide-reaching. It reaches viewers who may not even know who Jasmine Crockett is, but will now associate her with being the butt of a joke rather than a legislator with a record. It's important to recognize that this tactic also serves Candace Owens's own interests. In the modern attention economy, outrage and ridicule are profitable. They generate clicks, engagement, and loyalty. Laughter, especially when aimed at a political enemy, travels quickly online. It's meme-able, repeatable, and it reinforces a persona of intellectual dominance. Owens leverages this to maintain relevance and to project confidence in the face of opposition. It's a power play disguised as entertainment. And for her, mocking Jasmine Crockett isn't just a moment of amusement, it's a move in a much larger game of ideological warfare. It keeps her audience entertained, engaged, and aligned with her worldview, even if the substance of the issues gets lost in the process. In this media environment, where personalities often overshadow policies, Owens's laughter operates like a scalpel. It cuts into the political legitimacy of her opponents, not through argument, but through amusement. And because people remember how they feel more than what they hear, laughter becomes a lasting impression. Crockett may have policy experience and legislative accomplishments, but a single viral moment of laughter can undermine all of that in the eyes of a cynical or uninformed viewer. This is not a commentary on whether Owens is right or wrong, it's an observation about the mechanics of media power and how humor can be harnessed not for healing or insight, but for domination and dismissal. When someone like Candace Owens laughs at someone like Jasmine Crockett, it's not just about that moment, it's about who gets to control the story that follows. Public mockery has become a defining feature of modern political discourse, transforming the way elected officials are perceived and how debates are conducted in the public sphere. What once may have been considered unbecoming or unprofessional behavior is now often rewarded with viral attention, media coverage, and political capital. When a figure like Candace Owens laughs at Jasmine Crockett, the moment becomes more than a simple act of ridicule, it becomes a tool to influence public opinion, reduce political complexity to entertainment, and distort the gravity of serious discussions. In today's media landscape, mockery doesn't just entertain, it reshapes narratives. Crockett, as a sitting congresswoman, represents a legitimate voice in the democratic process, yet in the context of public ridicule, her voice is filtered through a lens of derision that minimizes her role, policies, and intentions. This tactic is not unique to Owens or this particular incident, but it exemplifies a trend where mockery substitutes for substantive criticism, and entertainment value eclipses civic responsibility. The implications of this shift are profound. When political discourse devolves into comedy at the expense of individuals rather than ideas, the line between debate and degradation blurs. Mockery becomes a strategy not to challenge beliefs, but to erase legitimacy. This is particularly damaging in the context of minority voices in politics, as figures like Crockett often carry the added burden of representation. Dismissing them through public laughter doesn't only attack them personally, it can also marginalize the communities and concerns they represent. When Owens ridicules Crockett, it resonates beyond the two individuals, it sends a signal about which perspectives are deemed worthy of respect and which are targets for derision. The broader public, in turn, becomes conditioned to evaluate political figures not based on their ideas, accomplishments, or reasoning, but based on how well they stand up to mockery in the court of public opinion. This evolution of political engagement into a spectacle has many drivers, including the rise of social media, the monetization of outrage, and the public's shrinking attention span. In this environment, moments of mockery are packaged and circulated as digestible clips, quick hits of entertainment that demand no context, invite little reflection, and elicit instant reaction. These clips go viral not because they are informative but because they are emotionally charged and visually gripping. Owens understands this, which is why her ridicule of Crockett is both performative and strategic. She doesn't just disagree, she dismantles her target with laughter, turning a political figure into a punchline. This method resonates with viewers who may not be politically engaged but find entertainment in watching one figure dominate another in a public setting. That dynamic alters how politics is consumed, favoring spectacle over substance and emotional validation over intellectual engagement. The cultural consequences of this behavior cannot be ignored. Political mockery as a tool of engagement reinforces a toxic style of communication that encourages bullying, tribalism, and personal attacks. It shifts the goalposts of discourse from persuasion to humiliation. When someone like Owens laughs at someone like Crockett, it doesn't encourage her audience to think critically about Crockett's arguments or policy positions, it encourages them to dismiss her outright. This dismissal, repeated and amplified, becomes a form of social conditioning. Over time, viewers are taught to associate certain expressions, tones, or even demographic identities with incompetence or absurdity simply because they were once the subject of public ridicule. This further deepens political polarization and corrodes the norms of respectful dialogue that democracy depends on. Furthermore, the normalization of public mockery weakens the role of accountability in politics. When political criticism takes the form of derision, it no longer holds leaders accountable based on facts or policy outcomes. Instead, it turns complex issues into character dramas. This creates a climate where politicians are judged not by the merit of their work, but by their perceived charisma, humor, or ability to withstand humiliation. In this distorted framework, someone like Crockett, who may be focused on legislative advocacy, civil rights, or community issues, is evaluated not on her contributions but on her media performance. The metrics for political success shift from governance to optics, from substance to meme-worthiness. This change makes it increasingly difficult for serious political voices to be heard, particularly when they are drowned out by louder, more provocative personalities. Candace Owens' choice to publicly mock Jasmine Crockett is also part of a broader pattern of targeting individuals as representatives of entire ideologies. Rather than engage with Crockett's views, Owens mocks her persona, her presentation, and her public image. This tactic de-individualizes the target. Crockett is no longer Jasmine Crockett, the congresswoman, she becomes a stand-in for every progressive idea Owens opposes. This symbolic reduction allows Owens to score political points without addressing the nuances of policy or principle. Her laughter functions as shorthand for ideological rejection, bypassing the need for a well-structured argument. The implications of this are dangerous for democratic discourse because they reduce complex ideological conflicts to personality clashes. Voters are left with impressions, not information. This style of communication also influences how political supporters behave. When prominent media figures publicly mock elected officials, it sets a tone that trickles down to followers, activists, and everyday voters. Political discourse becomes more antagonistic, more dismissive, more about winning than understanding. Viewers take cues from figures like Owens, adopting the same tone in their interactions online and offline. The result is a breakdown in civility and a culture of cruelty, where disagreement is seen not as an opportunity for dialogue but as a chance to destroy the opposition emotionally and publicly. In this climate, mutual respect disappears, and politics becomes a blood sport, with laughter replacing logic as the dominant mode of expression. Public mockery also disproportionately affects women in politics, especially women of color. Jasmine Crockett, as a black woman in Congress, already faces systemic scrutiny and skepticism. When someone like Candace Owens mocks her, it reinforces existing prejudices and adds another layer of difficulty to navigating public life. Owens, although also a black woman, often leverages this dynamic in a contrarian way, using her platform to challenge progressive black voices from a conservative standpoint. This intra-community criticism is especially potent, as it appears to validate the narratives of those who would otherwise be dismissed as racially insensitive. The laughter from Owens therefore carries a double edge. It's not just external criticism, it's criticism from within, and that makes it more damaging to the perception of authenticity, unity, and credibility for figures like Crockett. The media plays a complicit role in amplifying these moments. Clips of Owens mocking Crockett are shared not because they offer insight, but because they provoke reaction. News outlets, social platforms, and content aggregators capitalize on this spectacle, feeding into the cycle of performative politics. Instead of covering Crockett's policy positions or Owens's arguments, the focus shifts to the viral nature of the exchange. This creates a feedback loop where behavior that generates attention, mockery, sarcasm, humiliation, is rewarded with more exposure, while serious discourse is relegated to the sidelines. Political engagement becomes a passive, reactive experience for the public, shaped by moments of ridicule rather than sustained discussion. Media personalities have become central figures in shaping the public's perception of elected officials, often wielding more influence than traditional journalists or political analysts. In the case of Candace Owens, her commentary on politicians like Jasmine Crockett reaches millions of viewers across platforms, many of whom rely on personalities like her for political interpretation, emotional guidance, and confirmation of their ideological beliefs. Owens is not merely reporting on or analyzing Crockett's actions, she is framing them, contextualizing them, and assigning them value, or lack thereof, through her unique perspective and rhetorical approach. This shaping of public perception is one of the most potent functions of modern media figures. They provide their audiences not just with facts but with a filter, a framework through which to view politics, and they often do so with persuasive emotional tools such as humor, sarcasm, anger, and ridicule. When Owens speaks about Jasmine Crockett, she does not speak neutrally. She selects language, tone, and presentation style that frame Crockett in a particular light, often negative. This framing is critical because many viewers will never watch Crockett's speeches, read her policies, or follow her legislative work directly. Instead, they will rely on Owens's interpretation to form their opinion. This handoff of trust gives media personalities significant power over public opinion, especially among politically disengaged or ideologically rigid audiences. Owens, through her platform, curates a version of reality in which Crockett becomes a symbol rather than a person, a representative of the other side, the opposition, the enemy. This symbolic transformation distorts the viewer's ability to perceive Crockett as a complex individual with ideas worth evaluating on their own merits. This phenomenon is amplified by the echo chamber effect inherent in digital media environments. Viewers who follow Owens likely consume content that aligns with her ideology, reinforcing existing beliefs while insulating them from alternative viewpoints. In such a setting, Owens's portrayal of Crockett becomes a self-reinforcing narrative. Each time Crockett is mentioned, it's not to explore her work or examine her policy positions, but to reaffirm her as a target of ridicule or distrust. This repetition shapes not only how Crockett is viewed but how her entire political ideology is perceived. The danger here lies in the erosion of independent thought. Rather than analyzing multiple sources or engaging with diverse perspectives, viewers accept Owens's framing as definitive. The result is a skewed understanding of political figures, shaped not by what those figures actually say or do, but by how they are presented by powerful media voices. Candace Owens operates with an awareness of her influence and tailors her messaging to maximize impact. She uses performance techniques, tone shifts, facial expressions, pauses, and gestures to convey meaning beyond her words. These techniques engage audiences on a visceral level. Her laughter at Jasmine Crockett, for instance, may seem spontaneous, but it serves a calculated purpose. It diminishes Crockett without requiring a detailed critique. It turns a political opponent into a source of entertainment. By doing so, Owens reinforces a hierarchy in which she positions herself as intellectually and morally superior, while delegitimizing Crockett's credibility. This has a ripple effect. When a viewer sees Crockett as laughable or unserious based on Owens's portrayal, that perception bleeds into real-world opinions, voting behavior, and civic attitudes. Media personalities also benefit from the performative nature of modern politics. Unlike elected officials, who are bound by the constraints of governance, legislation, and accountability, commentators like Owens are free to construct narratives without consequence. They are not beholden to accuracy in the same way public servants are. This asymmetry gives them a strategic advantage. Owens can pick moments from Crockett's speeches, extract them from context, and present them in a way that supports her point of view. Because her content is consumed in short-form videos, tweets, and podcast clips, her framing becomes the dominant perception of Crockett for many viewers. Even if Crockett responds or clarifies, the damage is often already done. The initial impression, especially when emotionally charged or humorous, tends to stick. This dynamic highlights the shifting power structures in political discourse. Whereas elected officials once held the dominant voice in shaping public narratives, that role has increasingly been taken over by media figures. Owens is not the only one who does this, but she is a prominent example of how individuals with large platforms and loyal followings can eclipse the voices of actual policymakers. Her critique of Crockett is not confined to a single moment, it becomes part of a broader campaign to define, undermine, and marginalize political opposition. The influence of such commentary is difficult to quantify, but it is undeniably profound. Public trust, perception of integrity, and ideological loyalty are all at stake. Moreover, the personalities viewers align with often become surrogate identities. People see themselves in figures like Candace Owens, adopting her tone, echoing her opinions, and defending her perspectives with zeal. This personal identification blurs the line between media and self-perception. When Owens mocks Crockett, her followers don't just witness an attack, they participate in it. They share it, laugh with it, reinforce it in their own circles. Crockett becomes a communal target, and Owens becomes a communal voice. This collective reinforcement further shapes public perception, not just of one politician, but of entire political philosophies. The stakes extend far beyond the individuals involved, touching the foundations of how people engage with democracy. The media also plays an instrumental role in enabling this influence. News organizations, social media platforms, and content aggregators amplify the voices of personalities like Owens because they generate engagement. Algorithms prioritize controversy, and the kind of emotionally charged content Owens produces performs exceptionally well in this environment. Her portrayal of Crockett is not just her own, it becomes embedded in the broader media narrative. Headlines, thumbnails, and video titles echo her tone, feeding an information ecosystem that is skewed toward sensationalism rather than balance. The traditional gatekeeping role of the press has been disrupted, and the authority to define public figures now rests in the hands of those who can attract attention and keep it. For elected officials like Jasmine Crockett, this creates a complex challenge. They must navigate not only legislative responsibilities but also media warfare. They are forced to respond to viral moments, often created by media personalities with no accountability and no requirement to engage fairly. Crockett may work tirelessly on important issues, but a single clip of Owens mocking her can overshadow months of substantive effort. The media's focus on virality over value means that perception often outpaces performance. Public officials must then allocate time, energy, and resources to countering narratives rather than advancing policy. This redefines the nature of political service in the digital age, where media narratives can build or destroy reputations in a matter of hours. In this environment, the role of media personalities becomes not just influential but determinative. Owens's portrayal of Crockett is one example among many that demonstrate how these figures guide the public's understanding of who deserves attention, respect, or ridicule. The implications for democracy are significant. When perception is dictated not by policy outcomes but by media performance, the electorate is deprived of meaningful engagement with the issues that affect their lives. Political figures become players in a media drama, judged not by the content of their legislation but by the commentary that surrounds them.